Margaret Whitmore sat in the grand living room of her estate, the glow of the chandelier casting soft light over the marble floors. The house was a symbol of everything she and her late husband had built, a life of luxury, prestige, and power. Yet, despite all the success, something weighed heavily on her heart. Her son, Ethan Whitmore, was everything a mother could be proud of. At just 32 years old, he was already a billionaire, the CEO of Whitmore Enterprises, and one of the most eligible bachelors in the country. With his sharp business acumen, charming personality, and striking good looks, he could have any woman he wanted. But that was precisely the problem. Every woman wanted him, or rather, his money. Margaret had watched for years as Ethan dated models, socialites, and heiresses, only to end up disappointed each time. His relationships never lasted long. Every woman he met seemed more interested in the lifestyle he could provide rather than in the man himself. And Ethan, growing weary of the cycle, eventually stopped trying. His life became nothing but board meetings, business deals, and endless work. Margaret sighed, setting down her teacup. She needed to do something. Ethan deserved love, real love. Someone who would care for him not because of his wealth, but because of the man he was. Someone who could make him laugh, challenge him, and stand beside him not as a trophy, but as a true partner. But how could she find such a woman? That was when an idea struck her. It was unconventional, perhaps even absurd, but Margaret was never one to shy away from drastic measures when it came to her family. What if she went undercover? She could disguise herself as a cleaning lady at Whitmore Enterprises, blend into the background, observe, and see firsthand how the women in Ethan's company behaved when they thought no one important was watching. It was risky, but Margaret had always believed that the best way to understand someone's true nature was to see how they treated those they had nothing to gain from. A slow smile spread across her lips. Yes, this could work. The next morning, Margaret made arrangements. She spoke with a trusted friend who handled human resources at Whitmore Enterprises and, with a bit of persuasion, secured a temporary position as a janitor under a false name, Maggie Walters. To make the disguise convincing, she changed her appearance. She swapped her designer dresses for a simple blue uniform, exchanged her pearl earrings for cheap studs, and tied her perfectly styled hair into a low ponytail. She even added a pair of thick glasses to complete the look. Standing in front of the mirror, she barely recognized herself. "Perfect," she murmured. The next step was getting into character. Margaret had never cleaned a day in her life. She had housekeepers and staff who took care of everything. But she spent the next few days learning the basics, mopping floors, wiping down desks, and emptying trash bins. It was humbling, but she was determined. Finally, the day arrived. Margaret stepped into the towering glass building of Whitmore Enterprises, her heart pounding slightly. The lobby was bustling with activity. Employees rushing to their desks, assistants carrying stacks of paperwork, and executives engaged in intense discussions. No one paid attention to the cleaning lady as she quietly grabbed a mop and started working. Perfect. For the first few hours, Margaret observed. She saw how some people ignored her entirely, treating her as if she were invisible. Others were polite, offering a small smile or a nod as they passed by. But a few, mostly the ones who held higher positions, were outright dismissive, leaving messes for her to clean without a second thought. She noted it all. And then, during her lunch break, she met her first potential candidate. Sitting alone at a corner table in the employee break room was a young woman with auburn hair and warm brown eyes. Unlike the others, who barely acknowledged Margaret's presence, this woman smiled and gestured toward the seat across from her. "You can sit here if you'd like," she said kindly. Margaret hesitated, then took the seat. "I'm Amelia," the woman introduced herself. "You must be new here." Margaret smiled back. "Yes, first day." "Well, welcome. It's not always easy working here, but if you ever need help, just let me know." Margaret was intrigued. Most people wouldn't go out of their way to befriend a janitor. This girl, Amelia, might just be someone worth watching. Little did she know, this meeting would set the course for everything that followed. And perhaps, just perhaps, she had found the woman who could change her son's life forever. Margaret Whitmore had always been a woman of strategy. She built Whitmore Enterprises from the ground up, watching it flourish into one of the most successful corporations in the country. But despite her business acumen, she found herself struggling with something far more personal: her son, Daniel. Daniel was everything a mother could be proud of. At 35, he was the CEO of Whitmore Enterprises, a man of integrity, intelligence, and ambition. But there was one thing missing: love. Margaret had introduced him to countless socialites, heiresses, and well-bred women from their high society circles. But none of them had ever truly captured his heart. They were more interested in his money and status than in the man himself. Determined to find him someone who loved him for who he truly was, Margaret devised an unconventional plan. She would disguise herself as a cleaning lady and observe the women working in her company. She believed that true character revealed itself when no one was watching. On a chilly Monday morning, Margaret arrived at the headquarters of Whitmore Enterprises, not as its esteemed founder, but as Helen, an elderly cleaning lady in a faded gray uniform. Her usually elegant blonde hair was tucked under a worn-out cap. Her jewelry and expensive accessories were gone, and in her hands, she held a mop and a bucket. Her entrance went largely unnoticed. Employees bustled about, too busy with their deadlines and meetings to pay attention to a new janitor. It was exactly what she wanted. Margaret spent the first few days quietly observing. She quickly learned that many of the high-powered executives barely acknowledged the cleaning staff. Some left messes without a second thought, while others spoke down to her, assuming she was uneducated or beneath them. It was disheartening but not surprising. However, amidst the indifference and arrogance, one person stood out: a young woman named Amelia Carter. Amelia worked in the marketing department, a mid-level employee who was neither the richest nor the most influential person in the company. But what caught Margaret's attention wasn't her status. It was her kindness. The first time Margaret noticed Amelia was in the break room. Margaret had been wiping down tables when Amelia walked in, holding a stack of papers in one hand and a coffee cup in the other. Most employees would ignore the cleaning staff, but Amelia did something different. "Good morning," she greeted with a warm smile. Margaret, momentarily caught off guard, nodded. "Good morning, dear." Amelia seemed to notice Margaret struggling with a heavy trash bag. Without hesitation, she set down her papers and stepped forward. "Here, let me help you with that." Margaret was stunned. In all her years disguised as a cleaner, she had never seen an employee voluntarily help with cleaning work. "Thank you, dear," Margaret said softly, watching Amelia as she tied the bag and lifted it effortlessly. "It's no problem," Amelia replied, dusting off her hands. "You work so hard every day. The least I can do is make it a little easier." Margaret felt a tug in her heart. Over the next few weeks, Margaret kept a close eye on Amelia. She was always kind, not just to Margaret, but to everyone around her. Unlike some of the executives who only cared about impressing those above them, Amelia treated people with the same level of respect, regardless of their position. One afternoon, Margaret overheard a conversation between Amelia and a coworker. "You're staying late again?" her friend asked. Amelia nodded, tucking a loose strand of brown hair behind her ear. "Yeah, I need to finish this campaign strategy. I want to make sure everything is perfect before presenting it to Mr. Whitmore." Margaret's interest piqued. Mr. Whitmore was her son, Daniel. "You work harder than anyone else here," the coworker said. "Why haven't you been promoted yet?" Amelia shrugged. "I'm not in it for the title. I love what I do, and I believe hard work will pay off eventually." Margaret smiled. Not only was Amelia kind, but she was also ambitious and dedicated. One evening, as Margaret was emptying trash bins, she overheard two executives whispering in the hallway. "Did you hear about Amelia?" One of them snickered. "She comes from a small-town background. She's not one of us." "Yeah," the other one added, rolling his eyes. "She actually talks to the janitors." "Can you believe that?" Margaret clenched her fists. These were the same men who had never once acknowledged her presence, despite her true identity as the company's founder. That night, as Margaret lay in bed, she knew she had made her decision. Amelia was different. She was everything a person should be: kind, hardworking, humble, and genuine. Margaret was certain, if anyone deserved to be with her son, it was Amelia. Now, she just needed to find a way to introduce them. Margaret Whitmore had seen enough to know Amelia was different from the women who often surrounded her son. But as a businesswoman, she believed in due diligence. Observing Amelia from afar was one thing. Testing her character in real-life situations was another. If she was going to introduce Amelia to Daniel, she needed to be absolutely sure that the young woman's kindness and integrity were genuine. One crisp morning, Margaret entered the break room carrying a bucket of water, carefully staged for her first test. As she accidentally tripped over the leg of a chair, the bucket tipped over, sending water splashing across the tiled floor. Several employees were in the room, but most of them simply looked over, murmured something under their breath, and walked away. Amelia, however, immediately set down her coffee cup and rushed to Margaret's side. "Oh no, are you all right?" she asked, concern in her voice. Margaret feigned embarrassment, mumbling, "I'm fine, dear, just a little clumsy these days." She reached for the mop, expecting Amelia to step back like everyone else had. Instead, Amelia was already kneeling, using napkins to soak up the excess water. "Let me help you clean this up," Amelia insisted. Margaret watched her carefully, noting how she didn't hesitate, didn't look around for praise, and didn't act like helping was beneath her. She simply saw someone in need and stepped in without a second thought. Margaret smiled to herself. So far, so good. Later that week, Margaret faced an unexpected but revealing situation. While wiping down desks in one of the company's conference rooms, she overheard two junior executives whispering near the coffee machine. "I don't understand why she's always talking to the cleaning lady," one of them scoffed. "Yeah, it's embarrassing. If she wants to move up in the company, she should be networking with the right people, not wasting time with some janitor," the other added with a smirk. Margaret sighed. It was a cruel but common mentality in the corporate world. Just as she was about to walk away, Amelia entered the room, unaware of the conversation taking place. One of the men smirked. "Hey, Amelia, you seem pretty close with the cleaning staff. Trying to get on their good side," he joked. Amelia's brows furrowed. "Excuse me? You know, always talking to them, helping them out. You don't have to pretend to care." The look on Amelia's face hardened. "First of all," she said, her voice calm but firm, "her name is Helen, and she's not just a cleaning lady. She's a person who works just as hard as anyone else in this building. If you can't respect her, that says more about you than it does about me." The two men exchanged glances, clearly taken aback. "Relax, we were just joking," one of them mumbled before walking away. Amelia sighed, shaking her head before turning to Margaret. "I'm sorry you had to hear that. Some people don't understand the value of treating others with kindness." Margaret felt a lump in her throat. Amelia had defended her without hesitation, despite knowing it wouldn't earn her any favor with the higher-ups. This wasn't an act. This was who she truly was. A week later, Whitmore Enterprises hosted an annual charity gala, a glamorous event where employees had the rare opportunity to mingle with the company's elite, including CEO Daniel Whitmore. Amelia, like many of her colleagues, attended in a modest but elegant navy blue dress. As she wandered through the ballroom, admiring the decor and charity initiatives, she had no idea that Margaret was watching her closely from across the room. This time as herself, Margaret noticed something remarkable. While most employees gravitated toward the wealthiest and most influential guests, Amelia seemed uninterested in impressing anyone. Instead, she spent time chatting with the catering staff, helping an elderly woman find her seat, and bidding on silent auction items, not for expensive jewelry or designer bags, but for donations to children's education programs. Daniel, too, was observing. Though he hadn't officially met Amelia yet, something about her intrigued him. She was unlike the women he usually met at these events. Feeling mischievous, Margaret decided it was time for the next step. She approached her son, an idea forming in her mind. "Daniel, have you met Amelia Carter?" she asked, nodding toward the young woman. Daniel glanced at her, interest flickering in his eyes. No, but I think I'd like to. Margaret smiled knowingly. A few minutes later, Daniel made his way to Amelia, who was admiring a painting up for auction. "Beautiful piece, isn't it?" he said, standing beside her. Amelia turned and immediately recognized him. "Oh, Mr. Whitmore, good evening. Call me Daniel," he said with an easy smile. Amelia hesitated, then nodded. "All right, Daniel." He glanced at the auction sheet. "Thinking of placing a bid?" She laughed lightly. "I wish. It's a bit out of my price range. But I love what it represents. Hope, resilience, and the importance of education." Daniel's interest deepened. Most people at this event only cared about luxury and prestige, but Amelia saw something more. They spent the next 20 minutes talking, and for the first time in a long time, Daniel found himself genuinely enjoying a conversation. Not about business, not about wealth, but about life, values, and dreams. Margaret watched from a distance, her heart swelling with satisfaction. Amelia had passed every test with flying colors. Now, there was only one thing left to do: reveal the truth. Amelia sat at her desk, reviewing the latest reports for an upcoming marketing campaign. It had been a few weeks since the charity gala, and she still thought about the unexpected conversation she had with Daniel Whitmore. He was different from what she had imagined. Down-to-earth, charming, and genuinely interested in what she had to say. But she hadn't let herself dwell on it too much. After all, what were the chances that the billionaire CEO of Whitmore Enterprises would remember a simple marketing associate like her? That was, until she received an unexpected message in her inbox. Her heart skipped a beat. She stared at the email, reading it over and over again. "Amelia, I really enjoyed our conversation at the gala. I'd love to continue it over lunch. Let me know when you're free. Best, Daniel." Amelia hesitated, unsure if she should accept. But after a few deep breaths, she replied, "I'd love to. How about this Friday?" That Friday, Amelia arrived at a private dining lounge inside Whitmore Enterprises, expecting a casual lunch with the CEO. However, the moment she walked in, she saw not only Daniel but also Margaret Whitmore. Except this time, Margaret wasn't in a janitor's uniform. She was elegantly dressed, radiating the grace of the woman who had built an empire alongside her late husband. Amelia froze, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Margaret smiled gently. "Hello, Amelia." Amelia's eyes widened. "Mrs. Whitmore?" Her voice barely came out as a whisper. Daniel looked between the two women, confused. "Wait, you two know each other?" Margaret chuckled. "Yes, we do, but not the way you think." She turned back to Amelia, her expression filled with warmth. "I owe you an explanation, my dear." Amelia slowly sank into the chair across from them, her pulse racing. Margaret took a deep breath and began. "For years, I've watched my son be surrounded by people who only see his wealth, his name, and his status. But I wanted to find someone who saw more than that. Someone who valued kindness, respect, and genuine human connection. That's why I disguised myself as a cleaning lady in our company. I needed to see how people treated those they had nothing to gain from." Amelia felt her hands tremble slightly. "So, you were testing me?" "In a way, yes," Margaret admitted. "But not just you. I observe many people. And I saw something special in you, Amelia." She reached forward, covering Amelia's hand with hers. "You didn't just treat me with respect. You defended me when others looked down on me. You never hesitated to help, never looked for praise. That kind of kindness can't be faked." Amelia was speechless. Everything suddenly made sense. The moments that seemed like coincidences, the odd interactions. She turned to Daniel, who was just as stunned. "You knew nothing about this?" she asked him. Daniel shook his head. "Not a thing. I can't believe it. Mom, you were pretending to be a janitor this whole time." Margaret nodded, smiling softly. "And it was worth it, because now I know. I found someone who sees beyond our name, someone who is good not because they expect something in return, but because that's simply who they are." She turned to Daniel. "And that's the kind of person I want for you, my son." Amelia felt her face heat up at Margaret's words. Daniel leaned back, his eyes fixed on Amelia. "Wow," he murmured. "I knew there was something different about you, Amelia. I just didn't know how much." A small, nervous laugh escaped Amelia. "This is a lot to take in." Margaret smiled knowingly. "Take your time, dear. But just know, my instincts have never failed me before." After that day, Daniel and Amelia began seeing each other more often. Not in grand, extravagant ways, but in simple, meaningful moments. Walks in the park, coffee runs, late-night conversations. Daniel found himself drawn to Amelia's sincerity, while Amelia saw a side of Daniel the world rarely got to see. The man behind the billions, the one who longed for genuine companionship. Months passed, and their bond deepened. Margaret watched with joy as their relationship blossomed, knowing in her heart that she had made the right choice. One evening, as Amelia walked into her apartment, she found Daniel standing outside her door, a small velvet box in his hands. Her breath hitched. "Amelia," Daniel said, his voice filled with emotion. "From the moment I met you, you've changed my life in ways I never expected. You taught me what truly matters. Not money, not power, but love, kindness, and the people we choose to share our lives with." He got down on one knee, opening the box to reveal a sparkling diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Amelia's eyes. She thought back to that first day when she had helped a cleaning lady mop up spilled water, never realizing it was the moment that would change her life forever. With a trembling smile, she nodded. "Yes, Daniel. 1,000 times, yes." As Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger, Margaret watched from a distance, her heart full. She had found her son a wife. Not just any wife, but the perfect one. And Amelia had found something she never expected. A love that was real, pure, and destined.